Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. As promised, this week's video will not be a merch haul video. Instead, I'll be going back to my Fujoshi roots and reviewing not one but 3 BL mangas, which I'm super proud of because usually I take forever to finish a single manga in Japanese. And this week I managed to finish 3. So this is probably my biggest achievement for the week, so hooray for fulfilling life. So now let's get into the mangas. Okay, let me just put it out there. All the mangas reviewed today are yaoi mangas, which for the uninitiated means that there will be sexual scenes inside. That being said, all 3 that I'm reviewing today are pretty mild, so they are quite beginner friendly if you have just joined the Fujoshi ranks. And since it's a manga review, as much as I try to make it spoiler free, there will inevitably be spoilers. So I do recommend that you go support these authors and read the mangas first before watching this review. The first manga that I'm going to start with is Roku and Rui by Suiyobi. So out of all 3 mangas, this is my least favorite, and I'll tell you why later on. Roku and Rui are childhood friends who go estranged after an incident where Roku was caught kissing Rui by his friends in middle school. They end up going to the same university, which, coincidence? I think not. Where Roku finally decided to man up and confess to Rui, and they start a period of trial dating. I'm going to be positive and start off with what I like about this manga, and that is probably just Rui. He's really dumb, but at least he goes into the relationship sincerely. And that's pretty much all that I can say about him. And this is my biggest peeve with this manga, is that there's barely any development in terms of plot or character. They literally spend one night together and Rui falls in love with Roku. Which, yes, can happen, but not with how the plot was being written. After the disastrous falling out they had in middle school over Roku kissing Rui, Roku deliberately went after all the girls that Rui liked or they had mutual feelings with so that he can destroy his chances at having a relationship. Which I find really strange. Why not just man up and confess to Rui instead of going through this underhanded means? So apparently it seems like Rui and of course us as readers are all supposed to forgive him for that just because he's sweet to Rui after they start dating. Roku just comes across as being extremely manipulative and possessive. And for the first time ever when reading a BL, I honestly wish that Rui ended up with the girl who confessed to him at the start of the whole manga. Maybe it was the author's intention, but my impression of this is basically these 2 are still stuck in their middle school years without any personal growth since then. Yeah, without any personal growth since then, and it really shows in their interactions with each other. My overall rating for this will be a 1 out of 5. I think that the story could have been fleshed out a lot better. Maybe if we had some insight into their quarrel after the kissing incident, maybe, for all we know, Roku confessed seriously to Rui and Rui just dismissed it at that point in time, then it will make a lot more sense why Roku did what he had to do in order to force Rui to come back to him. But instead we just got the brief mention of the fight, nothing else was said, and then somehow they just made up and became lovers. So honestly, I feel that was quite a waste. It could have been so much more. And yeah, it wasn't really worth my brain effort trying to understand all the Japanese just to get through it. Next, I have僕が知らない君の顔 by Fuji. It is another story between estranged childhood friends. This time is between Aoba and Sho, who is 1 year younger than Aoba. These 2 grew up as neighbors but have not met for the last 2 years when all of a sudden, Sho lost his house and had to do a room share with Aoba. One day, Sho comes home drenched and crying, and for some reason, Aoba was just mesmerized by how beautiful he looked while crying. Following that, he starts to take an interest in Sho, and from there, their relationship develops. If I think of Roku and Rui as like an inconsequential middle school romance, then Bokuga seems to depict the coming of age kind of romance. Plot definitely progresses a lot slower compared to Roku and Rui, and the reader gets better insight as to how Sho fell for Aoba since young. It is also more believable when Aoba starts to fall for Sho over time in this room share situation. What also makes the story more realistic is Sho's struggle with accepting his love for his friend and how he tried to deny that so that he doesn't get hated by Aoba. Usually I find that yaoi set in this room share kind of setting usually turns out to be more like an ero manga without any real plot development. But Bokuga managed to subvert that convention to deliver a convincing relationship, so I will give it a 3.5 out of 5. Also, if you're looking for a similar kind of plot set in a room share situation, I highly recommend Living With You by Miyata Toru. That is another really nice and funny one that is set in a room share situation. The last manga I have for today is Akete Mo Kurete Mo by Kurahashi Tomo. This is the sequel to Itsuka Koi ni Naru Made and the prequel to Kazoku ni Naru Yo. And yes, I was very confused when this first came out because I thought the story ended with Kazoku ni Naru Yo, but this was being touted as the sequel to Itsuka Koi ni Naru Made. This story continues where Itsuka Koi ni Naru Made left off, and that is with Kazuma and Chiaki starting their university lives and meeting new people, which helps to broaden their views of the world and reaffirming their relationship. I have to say that nothing really happens much in this manga, but it is unbelievably good, and it works really because it's set in between the other two works and becomes a bridge connecting past and future selves. I highly recommend reading the prequel before starting this, because the contrast between their closeted lives in the prequel and the freedom and acceptance that they're experiencing now after moving out of their hometown is what helps to cement their relationship further. It is not all sunshine and roses though, as there's a glimpse of their family's struggle with accepting their relationship, which is explored further in Kazoku ni Naru Yo. What I really like about this series is how woke it is with regards to issues involving the LGBT+ community. Characters are portrayed sensitively, and while you do get your smut, it is not gratuitous or wanton. If you're reading this as an independent story, I'll probably give it a 4 out of 5, but if you're reading it as part of the series, I'll give it a 5 out of 5. And with that, we have come to the end of my review for these 3 BL mangas. Do leave me a comment below if you have read these mangas and let me know what you think about them. Before I say goodbye, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done so. And with that, see you next week!